Hello and a very warm welcome back to KGC Engineering. I know it's been a couple of weeks since our last video, but that's because we've had plenty of jobs which have been very similar, so we've not really had anything new and exciting to show you. However, this week we're doing a service on this Morris Minor van behind me, and as part of that service we're actually going to be changing the differential oil seal because it's failed on the van's recent MOT. It was picked up. So to do that we obviously need a variety of tools and things, but we've already drained the differential of oil, which I showed you in the previous video, and the gearbox as well. This is because we will be removing the prop shaft, and occasionally you can get oil coming out of the back of the gearbox if the seal there isn't particularly good. Now when you come to remove the prop shaft, you must make sure that where the prop shaft and the differential meet and the 4 bolts around there, that you put a mark on there. I'll show you the one that's on this van in a minute, because that means that the prop shaft is going to go back in the right place where it needs to on the differential. So let's get started. So here we are underneath the van now, and I'm hoping that you can see this. Obviously we have the prop shaft coming in here and the differential is here, and you can see, well, you might be able to see that there's a lot of oil has been pouring out of the front seal here. Now in the introduction I did just mention that you need to make sure that you mark up where the prop shaft meets the differential, and you can see here that somebody has very kindly put a white mark across where the 2 flanges meet. So when we come to put the prop shaft back in, as long as those 2 marks line up, we know it's going to be the right way around. So first job now is going to be to remove the 4 fixing nuts around this flange to get them out, and you may have to lift up the back axle and rotate the wheels to get the best angle to get at them, but I may get away with having a lot more room under the back of the van, which again is a good reason to show you this video on here rather than on the saloon or the Traveller. So let's start undoing the nuts. Right, so now you should obviously be able to see that I've managed to remove the prop shaft and I've just put it on the ground at the back out of the way. Now the next job is obviously one of the important ones, because we need to take out this great big nut in here, and obviously we don't want all this to be spinning around too much while we're trying to do that. So the car is on its wheels on some ramps. The handbrake is on as tight as you can get it, because this is really where you need it to be very, very tight. And quite simply, you need to find a suitably large size socket to fit the nut that's in there. And once you've got that on, a big breaker bar or breaker bar with an extension piece on made out of scaffold tube or something should be enough to break it free. So I'll just put the camera back down, hopefully be able to see what happens. Get it just at level for a minute. There we go. So hopefully you'll be able to see this as we get the socket to go on in the first place, he says. That's interesting.
Well, as you can see, it's a good solid fit on there, and which is obviously good. A good thing in some ways, like it's nice and tight. We know it's not going to be coming off there. But I'm going to have to reposition myself, and I may come outside the van and get my foot on the end of here, because you get a lot more pressure with your legs than you do with your arms, especially in an awkward position like this. So I'll just whiz out the other side, come around, move the camera and the lamp and things, get it set up again, and we can see about getting this off. Well, after the best part of 2 days, about 4 hours over the course of 2 days, finally managed to get the differential nut off, and I'm just going to take you underneath now so you can see exactly what's done to do it. And what hopefully you'll be able to see is that I've made a special bracket out of some very thick steel, and the other end of this through the tube is, as you can see, on top of the rear leaf spring. Now that is there to prevent the excess play that's in this differential bouncing around too much, which essentially was the main problem that we had. Now, to actually, in the end, to actually get it off, we got the nut as hot as we could, and then we used the impact wrench and went hell for leather at it, and eventually it gave up, and you know, tomorrow now we're going to be able to actually get this differential finished off. So unfortunately it's taken us sort of 3 days to do this, but at least now we're at a stage where we can have a good head start tomorrow or whenever we next come on to this, and we can get this job done at long last and hopefully stop this differential from leaking as much oil as it did. Alright. So now that we've got the nut finally taken out of the centre here, there is a spring washer which you need to try and remove, and you may need the use of something like a screwdriver just to help fish it out a little bit. As that's, well, if it wants to. Like everything on this, it's been a bit of a hard job, this. It's not particularly behaving itself. Come on, out you pop, please. There we go. So put that safely to one side, ready to be refitted later once we've changed the seal. Now the next job is to remove this coupling unit, which is obviously the piece that attaches to the prop shaft, and this will need a little bit of work on it to get it to go. And generally it is a case of just hit it out, and just make sure you change sides and just work your way around it. And hopefully you can see now that it is starting to come forward. There we go. So that's popped off there, and it's brought with it the dust cover, which is this part here on the back of it. So I'll put that to one side, and we're now presented with the old diff seal, and you can see here that it is obviously absolutely caked in rubbish, and there's definitely been a fair bit of oil weeping out of here. I can see that it's very wet and sticky down at the bottom here. So first I'm going to give it a quick clean up with a rag, and then we'll see about getting that out, give it a further clean up, and then we can start thinking about getting the new seal in. So you may wonder why we're cleaning it before we take it off. Well, if you clean it beforehand, it just helps avoid any rubbish getting in to the actual differential. I mean, some will get in there, it's probably inevitable that it'll go in there, but if you can reduce the amount of it, so much the better. Then to take the seal out, it is a case of just getting in a screwdriver or something and just work your way around, and it should eventually pop out. But I think this has been in for such a long time that it's very, very solid on here. So I may need something with a little bit more grip behind it to help it get going. So let's just give it a little tap with the old driver, so we can just get it to move. If we can. Just try working my way around a bit more, eh? It may take a little while to ease it out, but it will give up eventually. But given that this is very, very hard, it certainly suggests that it's probably not been sealing particularly well for a good while. And that the rubber has just hardened off so much that it no longer actually seals up properly anymore, which I think has probably been the main cause of the problem. Right, so just cleaning around the edge of it here, just to sort of find out where the seal actually is on it. As like I say, there's a fair amount of rubbish on it, and it's quite difficult to sort of see what's going on with it. But it's definitely not been a happy seal. What I'm hoping is that just by hitting the screwdriver in a bit, I'm going to be able to get behind and lever it out of it, but it's that flipping solid, it's just not quite having it, which is rather annoying. Seems that everything on this seal has been nothing but a pain for us. Oh, come on, you sod. Ah, you moved then. like I say, it can just be a case of just keep working your way around it. And obviously this is not the particularly designed for a screwdriver, what you should be using a screwdriver for, but it is actually doing the job, and I'm not really hammering into it incredibly hard, so I'm not doing any damage to the screwdriver. I'm just wedging it, getting it to wedge in a bit more each time, and there we go. You can now hopefully see, there we are. That is the old seal out of there, and you can clearly, hopefully be able to see on the camera there, that it's very, very worn out, and like I say, it's incredibly brittle, so it's little wonder that it's been leaking so badly, especially when we compare it to the new one, which is outside of the car at the moment, so I'll have to run out and get that. But now that that's out, at long last, as I said, we'll now give all this area in here a good clean around, just to make sure there's no bits of rubbish or anything in there that's going to potentially cause problems to us getting it back, the new one in and that, and we should be more or less ready to rock and roll. So I'll go and get the seal and a few other bits, and we'll start putting it all back together. Right, so here we have the new seal, and when you come to fit these, you've got to make sure that the little spring is on the inside. So basically you've got the flat edge goes on the outside, with the spring on the inside, because that helps hold everything together in there. Now before we put it in, it's advised to have a little bit of engine oil, or just a little bit of oil, just on the outside flange of the seal. I'll also put some in there as well. This just helps it to actually go in, and also just helps up with the bit of sealing of it as well. So that's got a bit of oil on. Let's put some more around there as well. Hopefully down there, so that should go in a bit easier now. I'll move it out of the way. And whilst I'm here as well, I'm also just going to put a little bit of general grease just on the splines here, for where the fitting goes onto it, that we tapped off before for the prop shaft, just to help that all go on a bit better. So that's that done. So now put it on. We're ready to start putting the seal in. There's no right or wrong way round to do this. Just get it on, and then it will take a little bit of work to get it in, but very carefully and very gently just tap it in with the hammer, one side at a time. Just work your way around it, and this is where the oil on it helps it go in. Be careful not to hit your thumb. It should go in. Because it's a tight fit, that's why you will need to use a hammer or similar tool just to knock it in and to the right place. And it will go, just takes a bit of time to get it in. And essentially you've got to go all the way around until the top of it is level with the casting for the diff itself. And as you can hear, we've got more of a metallic sound coming through now. More or less all the way around. So that is
probably in exactly where it needs to be. I can feel that with my finger there, that it's quite nice. So I'll just give it again just a little clean up around the edges. Over it. On top. So now we can look at fitting the dust cover and the flange work. That should just line up on the spines, and it may again need a little tap to get it home. If you can, try and remember to get it back on in the same position that you took it off with. And once it's at the end, you'll know about it, because it won't go any further. And that's feeling pretty much like it's more or less there. Just a few more hits, I think. That's there, and I can almost see the end of the splines in the end there, so I know that it's pretty much there now. So I suppose the next job now is to go and find the nut and the spring washer, clear a few other bits out of the way here, and then we can start getting it all torqued up. So the first thing to go back in is the spring washer, which we got out a little bit before. Then the next piece is obviously the nut. Now I've just given the end of this one a bit of a clean up, just to help get rid of any burrs or anything on it, so it's the same nut going back on. So start it by hand, don't need to go mad with it just yet. Once that's there, get the socket on when it wants to. There we go. I'm just going to ratchet that up first, because this will also now help bring the joining piece in a lot better. I'll get that as tight as I can there, because the next piece that we use is a very special tool, which is known as a torque wrench. So I'm actually just going to get the socket on. I'm just going to tap the socket on, just so that I know it's on there. And I've now got my torque wrench. Now with the torque wrench, you need to have it set to 140 foot-pounds. For this, apparently, if you read one of the manuals. So you just wind it up to the appropriate marker on there. And once it's there, I'll be able to tell you what it is in Newton pounds or whatever it is. Just wind that up. Well, what essentially a torque wrench does is it basically puts it has basically a setting that things should be tightened up to. So it's a gauging tool. So you never ever use one of these for undoing any bolts or anything. You only ever use it for tightening up. So I've now got that set to 140 foot-pound, which is about 190 Newton meters. So it is very simple. Okay, so you just put it on, and it works exactly like the ratchet. You just pull it down. Just keep ratcheting it until it clicks off. I'm not. Right, so we have to get off the trolley for this. So I need to be able to have my strength. So just press down with it. Right. Now I think before I go any further, I'm just going to get my special tool, which I made to take the nut off to allow me to put it back on. So just take that off for now, and I'll get back on my trolley and then come under and bolt all that up in place, which will be should be fairly easy to do. On there for a minute. Those two there. Just that on there for a minute and we'll get the bolts. The first one in. That's up there. What this tool will do, as it worked just as well getting the nut off in the centre here, it's going to help us get it on properly, because it's just going to stop any movement in there getting in our way. Essentially what's trying to happen is that everything is wanting to move and we're not getting the full amount of pressure that we need onto the nut to get it up good and tight to what we need it to. So they're on loosely. So as I said, what these will do are basically just help stop everything moving about too much. Top one on first. Get it up nice and tight. Doesn't need to be over tightened, but just tight enough so it's not going to get in our way or cause any problems, hopefully. As I said, this is a very simple homemade device which I knocked up in about an hour or so with some relatively thick steel plate which I happen to have lying around. But that'll do, make up a nice tool for us to do this particular job. Right, now look, those are on there. We'll get back under the torque wrench. So let's get in the that on there. And as you can see, it's now not moving anything in the way, which is good, which is what we want. And we can now get a much better force against the nut. Push this down to where it needs to go. And there we go. That big bang there. That tells me that the nut is now at 140 foot-pounds and essentially is not going to be coming off there. So that is now at the correct torque, and that is that back together, done. So we'll just take the torque wrench off when it wants to give it back. There we go. And whenever you've finished with your torque wrench, always make sure that you unwind it back to its lowest setting, or just below the lowest setting, because that then takes out all the stresses in the springs and the parts in there that make it work. It's not very often you have to use a torque wrench, but they're expensive tools, so you want to make sure they're well looked after, because it's a tool that will last you a lifetime. So let's pop that there, and then just lock the nut up, and that can now go back in its box until it's once again required for a job like this. So the next job now is going to be to just obviously take this our special tool off, get the socket off there, and we can then start putting the prop shaft back on, and then that is the job done once we've done that. Wow. Well, obviously apart from refilling it with appropriate oil. So let's get these bits off here and undone, and we'll be very quickly heading towards completion. So now, obviously, with all the extra bits removed, the last thing to go in now is the prop shaft, which I've once again brought under here. Now, it's important to try and remember to put the prop shaft back on in the correct orientation that it came off. And remember, with this one we have a little white mark on here, and there's also one up the other end as well. So let's start putting it in. Now, it's important to get the gearbox end in first, because that obviously has to go in, and is a bit less, it's a lot less easy to manoeuvre it afterwards. So I'll just drag that in across me, through the bits in the chassis where it goes, and then just feed the end in. Just quickly making a note of whereabouts I want the white mark, so I get it in more or less the right place, and then it's just a bit of a wiggle, and hopefully it'll start to go back on. Come on, baby. Come on. There we go, and she's on. And we can see there that I've got it so that it will more or less line up there. So whilst the chassis is just taken away, so I'll prepare a bolt to go through. And it is very much a case of the reversal order of where things came off to get them back on. So let's put that on there. That wants to go in, that one there. As you can see now, the two white marks line up where they're supposed to. So just get the nut on the end of that so it's not going to go anywhere in a hurry. And then we can start fitting out the rest of them, and we'll tighten them up as we get through out a bit more. Put that one on. Nuts in there. Where's we gone? There's one. Once you've got one or two on, the rest of them easily go in. But if you do find that you need to manoeuvre the prop shaft around, which I may well have to in a little while, then it's easy enough to do. I appear to have lost a nut and bolt.
That's clever. Where they've gone. Right, I'll have to go and find that. Found it. Knew there was another one. Just dropped off the trolley and gone under the wheels. So I couldn't find it. There we are, found it. So I'll just find the hole where it goes in. Should be around that. There we go. Get the nut on the back, and then I can see about getting all these tightened up. Should be good. Right. So I'll get all these tightened up, and that essentially is the job done. Like I said, the only other job then is to refill the differential with some fresh oil, and I did cover that in a previous video, so you don't need to see that. But once I've got this job done, I'll do a quick roundup, and that'll be the end of the video.
So there we go, that's how to change the differential oil seal on your Morris Minor. Now obviously a lot of the time this particular job goes a lot easier, and this has been a particular struggle for us over the last few days. It's actually taken us quite a few days to get this done for having very stiff nuts and things just generally not quite going to plan, which is one of the wonderful things about classic car restoration, is that you never really quite know what's going to happen or go to plan. You have an idea, but it might not always pan out that way. So anyway, I hope that you've really enjoyed this video, and if you have, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Also, don't forget to like the video and make sure that you do subscribe to this channel, because we will have another video for you very, very soon. So until then, happy classic motoring.